houses in Radiant Dawn notwithstanding, Fire Emblem tends to do a really good job at portraying members of the church as actually being kind and pious. Characters like Yodel, Mulder, Natasha, Reese, all of them show the mold of a kind, religious soul, and most of them do it in their own unique way. Normally in JRPGs, the church tends to be some kind of problem or a threat of some kind, but in Fire Emblem they typically were just normal people. And one of my favorite characters of that nature is Claude from Fire Emblem 4, the holy man who, if we wanted to get technical, is Fire Emblem's most potent necromancer. So today, I wanted to look back at the kind and serene Father Claude, and dive into his beliefs to show that he's actually got a lot more going on than you would initially think. And real quick, please remember to like, comment, and subscribe on the video. I know asking for that before the video even begins is stupid, but I have to appease the YouTube algorithm, and it's either this, or continue sacrificing children to the Elder Gods. So, if you don't help my channel grow, their blood is on your hands. Claude's introduction into the plot of FE4 is actually really funny the more I think about it. He shows up at the beginning of Chapter 3, bearing ill news for Lord Sigurd. The Crown Prince of Granvale Kurth was assassinated, and the crime was placed on Sigurd's father Byron, since he went missing shortly after Kurth's death. Now, Byron has absolutely zero motive to do the crime, and Claude can prove his innocence, not by doing any sort of logical detective work, but by dialing up God on the phone and asking him. Apparently, due to Claude's magical bloodline, he can communicate with holy spirits and ask them questions, which is crazy. Imagine if we based our legal system on talking to ghosts. I just realized that is literally a major plot point in Ace Attorney, son of a bitch. He's accompanied by Tale 2, a young woman who comically gets on his nerves with her overabundance of energy clashing with his calm and serene nature. FE4's writing tends to give the base traits of characters and let you fill in the gaps, so while the two share very little screen time together, you can imagine all the ways she can get on his nerves on their trek to the Holy Tower, and that can be a lot of fun. Once he's there, God gives him the details and tells him of Byron's innocence, and while there, he even finds the Holy Staff Valkyrie that lets him revive the dead. Sometimes. He tries to explain how it works, but the scene is kinda played off as a joke. This is a legendary magical staff with the power to restore life to the deceased. It is usable only by the direct descendants of Saint Bragi, that is to say, me alone. Huh. So what you're saying is, with this rod you could bring my sweet old grandma back to life? Alas, most likely not. Valkyrie is limited in many particular ways, and so cannot be used on just any lost soul. You see, all of mankind is born bearing a life force called quintessence, which... What was that? You lost me. Why are you still talking about this anyway? We gotta get out of here! Of course. Let us go. Now, I actually really like this joke, because it addresses a common plot hole in JRPGs that have character death. Why don't they just revive them? Like in Final Fantasy, why do Tella, Galif, or Aerith's death stick when you could just use a Phoenix Down or cast life on them? Normally games get around this by just never bringing it up, which I think is fair. But I like that there is some bullshit reason Claude can only revive certain people, and it just gets hand-waved. After that, Claude tells Sigurd that he intends to return to the capital and reveal the truth to the king, and warns Sigurd not to act rash, which, given Sigurd's track record, doesn't sound like it's gonna happen. Since this is an early Fire Emblem game, unit quality factors pretty heavily in how a character is remembered, and in Claude's case, he is a solid OK out of 10. His class of High Priest is part of the problem, as it's just a flat-out worse version of the Sage class with worse stats and no skills, and Claude himself doesn't have any skills either. But he does use magic, which means he is capable of pushing out decent chip damage, and his high staff rank means he is the best healer in the first generation, if you leave units in range of him. That Valkyrie staff is also a Claude exclusive, letting him revive any unit the player lost, It only has one use, but can be repaired for the low price of 30,000 gold. Which, first question, how the hell does every blacksmith in Yggdrasil have the tools and knowledge to imbue magic back into a sacred relic only one man in the world can use? And second question, 30,000 gold? You're telling me human life has a defined price in Yggdrasil. You think you would give me a discount if I said I was reviving Arden? After Sigurd flees to Selyse, Claude makes his journey to see the king, but he's intercepted by the influence of Reptor, the true villain that killed Prince Kurth. Thanks to him, Claude is also branded a traitor, and forced to hide away along with Sigurd. But Claude doesn't feel angry at Sigurd for this, only apologizing for being unable to help. He also warns Sigurd to calm his anger and not rush into things. Claude is constantly portrayed as a kind and wise man, acutely aware of the consequences of things, and tries to find a good solution. He's also rather fatalistic, remarking that there is nothing he and Sigurd can do to save themselves anymore, and they just have to go down the path that the fates have made for them. And knowing what the path the fates have made for them is, Claude, buddy, you might want to find a different belief system. Fatalism is not going to work out for you. Might I recommend capitalism? The world would still be terrible, but at least you could spend money on dumb things to make you feel something. For example, the Fire Emblem MS Paint Patreon would be a fantastic usage of your money. That's right, I have a Patreon, where for as little as $3 a month, you can support the channel and get access to benefits, like getting your name called out on videos, or getting access to polls to decide future episodes. Right now, it's a contest of Dragon Riders, and Har has a 1-point lead over Cormag, who has a 1-point lead over Travant, so it could change at any moment. Go to patreon.com/FEMSpaint and make the vote yourself. My patrons include the likes of Adebayo Thompson, Andrew Crockett, Benz Again, Clockwork 9000, Dr. McBackstab, Elizabeth, High on Heelys, Ichigo D. Camus, Jaeger Guts, Kenpachi Shiro, Uzumaki Kirei, Mato Kratos, Char Ansible, Frederick Sirius, Balsara Hakuman, The White Void, Despacito 2, Lysevening Bolt, Nevrix the Tourmaline Project creator, Shen Lu, Steph D, Tato, the world's most unironic 8.5 tail stand, Walmart Greeter, Your Girl Owen, Brentendo 11, Drew Hack, Fire Emblem Lord, Ginger, Gugu Gaga, Cornelia Milkers 92, Max the Knife, and Upscale Furry Trash. Thank you for... yeah. Chapter 4 has Claude's longest scene, where he meets with the dancer Sylvia, wherein he comically mistakes her revealing dancer's garb for underwear, worrying that she has recently been sexually assaulted by bandits. Actually, saying that out loud, it isn't really comical, is it? Anyways, Sylvia remarks that her revealing outfit is her own choice because she's a dancer and she loves it, and Claude is actually pretty understanding. A pleasant surprise given you'd expect him to be a prudent clergyman. Claude asks about her parents, wherein Sylvia explains that they're deceased and recounts her history of abuse living her life as a lonely orphan. Claude sympathizes with her and comforts her, and faced with his genuine words of kindness and encouragement, Sylvia finds herself brought to tears. It's a very tender scene for both of them, and does wonders for both their characterizations, continuing FE4's trend of making a lot with a little dialogue. The conversation also reveals that Claude had a little sister who was kidnapped when he was young, and he's never been able to find her. Now, given that Sylvia has the same holy blood as Claude, albeit not as powerful, that's led some to think that she is Claude's long-lost sister, and given that they can bone, and that if you pair Claude with someone, Sylvia is the best option, that's kind of a yikes moment. But in an interview, the game's creator Shozo Kaga remarks that they are not siblings. The only siblings that fuck are Deirdre and Arvis, which is intentionally shown as really, really bad. Now, there is rampant cousin fucking in this game, so I don't know how much I trust that, but it is stated that they are not siblings. They just had a common ancestor like 4 or 5 generations ago, which on the scale of gross relationships, really isn't that bad. I feel like you have to try to be pissed off at this one to be angry at it. And for the end of Claude's role, we have his lover conversations at the end of Gen 1, with Ideen, Tale 2, and Sylvia, and his Tale 2 and Sylvia conversations follow the same suit. In both of them, he wishes for them to flee to safety while he marches to his inevitable death. This is kind of the idea from most lovers' convos. The couple expresses their love for each other and their concern for one another, and then go off to die. It's just as heartwarming here as it is in every other lover convo. His aight conversation, though, I'm gonna read in full, as I feel like it's the one that most highlights who Claude is as a person. I have yet to speak a word of this, but you being my wife, well, I should probably tell you. This war will end in our defeat. All that is important to us will be lost. What? I, too, had a difficult time believing the Lord's words when I was at Bragi Tower. But this is how fate will have it. I also will not likely survive. That's why I'm entrusting this staff to you. That can't be true. I don't believe any of what you're saying. Please, tell me it's not true. Edain, there's really nothing to be scared of. My death is really just a new beginning. As life embraces death, that with form is lost, yet something still remains. There is nothing to fear in death. It is merely a transition to a more perfect form. But, Claude, just as I am to die, I shall also be reborn. Look, inside of you is a brand new life, and I am a part of it. And that is why you must keep living. How could you? You tell me to keep living, while you... Edain, I have been blessed to have met you. Forgive me if I sounded insensitive. Claude. This conversation both shows off Claude's fatalism to its endpoint and ties into the theme of the game itself. Claude's belief in destiny is because he was literally told by God that his journey would end in failure. And he could have told someone about that, but honestly everyone in Gen 1 can kind of feel that something's about to go wrong, so the word of God really wouldn't have changed much. But despite that, Claude isn't afraid of death. He leaves his hopes for the world in the hands of those left behind, aight and his children, so he's not worried at all. The theme of FE4 is the weight of legacy, and how what you do does have an impact even if you don't live to see it, and Claude's character perfectly shows that. The work Sigurd, Claude, and the rest of Gen 1 do does surface in Gen 2. The idea that no good deed will go unpunished shows Claude's fatalistic nature in a different light. It isn't, I can't do anything about my life, so what's the point? It's, I can't do anything about my life, but I will still fight on for those I meet, which makes Claude a very endearing character to me. Now Claude, despite dying at the end of Gen 1 like most of FE4, actually does appear in FE5. Kind of. His ghost does some shit. He appears to a man named Sleuth, and tells him to be his eyes and ears, and to lead the people when he no longer can. And Sleuth does so, if you go on his route. He's actually locked to one route of Thracia, so if you go the other route, you can't recruit Sleuth, and I guess Claude can go fuck himself. But hey, it's the thought that counts. Claude being mentioned is kinda just a cool side thing. It doesn't really do anything for anything, you just kinda do the Leonardo DiCaprio point when Claude's name is mentioned and then move on. But he is technically in Fire Emblem 5, and I mean very technically, so I felt as though it was worth mentioning nevertheless. I like Claude because I find how his religious faith and fatalistic mentality combine make for a way that ties into the themes of the game. He stands on his own as a kind, pious soul whose character could work in any Fire Emblem game, but the fact that he's in FE4 makes his character have more of a punch. He does suffer from having little screen time. He isn't as shafted as, say, Noish, but he definitely is a Kaga character pre-tier rank Saga, so you gotta make do with what you got. Claude does his role as a side character very well. He doesn't have that much to him, but what's there leaves a pleasant impression, and nevertheless is worth looking and researching. Even if he isn't as popular as Sigurd, or Ira, or Arden, I hope you'll look back at Claude like I do, and realize that this holy man is wholly worth looking into. I would like to thank you guys for making it to the end of another character analysis video. We've got quite a list lined up and quite a list more to go, so thank you for sticking around. I would like to thank my buddy Guy for looking over the video, making sure the script isn't stupid, and just all in all being a supportive friend. Thanks a ton, big man. If you enjoyed the video, consider coming on down to the Discord server. We like to have a lot of fun there, I post in there fairly frequently, and we, in general, just have a good time. It's worth coming by and seeing what's what. Also, if you have a moment, please consider watching an episode of my Look Back series. I do video game retrospectives, it has 4 episodes so far, and it's a passion project I thoroughly enjoy doing. Here's a clip from it to maybe make you consider coming by. Wow, a CEO whose greed is so great that he's willing to create a ruthless cycle of pain and destruction on an entire population just to line his own pockets? This game's really reminding us that sci-fi stands for science fiction, because there's no way men like him are real. Anyways.